Today on Metaphysical Mississippi, we have Miki Bryant, owner of Soulflower Healing Arts Studios, located in Starkville, Mississippi. She is a conscious development consultant and licensed professional counselor. Welcome to Metaphysical Mississippi. I'm your host, Emily, and I have my co-host, Krista, with me. And today we have Miki Bryant with us with Soulflower Healing Arts Studio. How you doing, Miki?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here visiting with the two of you today.
I know.
Yeah.
I guess you're doing okay too, Krista.
Yes, and
Yes.
actually, I got to be with Miki in person just a couple of evenings ago at our November metaphysical meetup. So, yeah, she shared a little bit about what she's got going on at the meetup. So I'm looking forward to her giving us a little teaser about that in the interview. But it's good to see you again, Miki.
Oh, it's great to see you too, Krista. And I just absolutely had the best time at the meetup. This time was my second time to come to one of the meetups. And I wanted to, one of the things I'd love to say about that real quickly is
Yes.
that I have been so impressed with how welcoming and warm the meetups are. You know, I sometimes when I go to a new place where I don't really know anybody, I will, kind of sit back and kind of survey the whole scene, and
We don't let people do that here.
no, I mean, it was so, yeah, I mean, I just felt like I'd been there forever when I came to the first one. So, so I really applaud what y'all are doing with the meetups and how you're, how you're creating that culture, that welcoming community. So fostering that. So,
And
that's
we have some beautiful people. I think I love, well, Mississippi is the hospitality state. So
that's true.
it's, we got a lot of friendly, loving, warm people in this community. I couldn't do it by myself. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, but we're so glad you got to come. Yeah.
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 Thank you.
And we're so excited because you're in Starkville, Mississippi, and we've been holding the meetups, which I've only been to 2 meetups myself, so I'm right there with you. But with the meetups, they've only been in the Jackson metro area, but I think we're taking it on the road.
Yes.
Yeah, Krista, you want to share a little bit about that real quick, and then we'll.
So it's been on our hearts for a long time to spread Metaphysical Mississippi all over the state. We are Metaphysical Mississippi. And in January, which I plan to have our first pop-up meetup out of the Jackson metro area, and Soulflower will be our first host venue for that. So we are so excited.
Yes.
We are very excited, and we're already getting a lot of energy generated here in Starkville about that. So people who come to the studio, and by the way, this room is where we will be meeting when everyone comes here for the pop-up meetup. So this is our mindfulness and our meditation space. So it divides into 2 spaces, but it's where we host all of our events. So y'all are getting a little bit of a little dip into what it's like to be a Soulflower.
Yes.
We're having a virtual meetup.
Yes. I love it. So but yeah, there's a lot, been talking it up a little bit and sharing. And so just everybody I speak to about it is just very excited. And we've talked about doing that on a weekend, like a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of interest. Some of the people who are interning here with us are college students, and they get really busy during the week. And they are excited about the opportunity to come to be a part of the meetup here on a weekend day when they have some freedom.
Do you find there is a strong metaphysical community in the Starkville area, or is it growing? What?
Yes, it's growing. We do have a pretty strong community here. There is a network. and at the same time, it's still kind of forming. It's kind of like everybody's really still kind of finding each other. So I see the meetup as a great opportunity for the people who are already here, who are kind of feeling a little bit lonely or isolated, to, you know, to be able to go, oh, there is a community there, you know, there are other people to connect with. I would have to say that, like, I met with a college student yesterday, and she's actually the editor of the MSU newspaper, who came to interview me because she's doing an article on metaphysical businesses in Starkville. And
Wow.
and she said, and one of the things that she mentioned to me was that she said, I'm sure there are a lot of students who have the same interest in this, you know, metaphysical topics, and having a place to be able to explore those topics and to, you know, have conversations around it. I'm sure that there's a larger student population. She said, you know, because I know that I have these interests, and I have lots of questions, and I have a few friends who also have some similar interests, but, you know, I'm just glad to know that there's a place here to be able to connect and do that. So,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I feel like there's, you know, I meet people almost on a daily basis who are like, I'm so glad to know y'all are here. You know, I've been searching for something, you know, a place like this where I can just be myself, you know, and really, um, uh, become more of who I am, and feel free to, um, to let these aspects of myself be seen,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
I love that. And don't you just love the younger generation that's coming up through they're early and mid-20s. They're they're at that stage where they're starting to mature a little bit, but they're still young enough to be curious and ask questions. And I just love working with that age group right now.
Oh yes, I do too. And throughout my practice, because I am in that in the college town, in my counseling practice, and working with, you know, working with people in more of kind of a coaching role, as, you know, in with the hypnotherapy and conscious development work that I do with them. That age is so, oh, it's just so rewarding and fulfilling to work with, because they are in that transitional kind of time of life where they're discovering who they are, and they're recognizing kind of that old conditioning.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and you know, they're like, well, I don't want to, you know, I don't really want to be a part of that anymore, and I know there's something more. And they step so easily into it, you know. Like, people more our age, or, you know, tend to have a little bit more of a challenge in
Mhm.
making those changes, or feeling comfortable with making those changes. But yeah, that age group is just, oh, I just love it. The energy that they bring is wonderful.
So, Miki, why don't you share a little bit about your metaphysical origins? You know, what is one of the earliest memories you've had, you know, that you realized that was kind of woo-woo? And then you can also share what you do now, maybe what led you to doing what you do now, if it was some influences from, you know, your past, and then as a child. And then you can share what's going on and what people have to look forward to in the upcoming year there
Okay.
at your space.
Okay. Well, thank you, Emily. So, as far as my metaphysical roots, or origin story with that,
Mhm.
as I kind of look back over my life, you know, I look back and I see, oh, now I see all the little synchronicities. I see the points throughout, my childhood and adulthood, where there were all of these little signs that were kind of pointing me in the direction of metaphysics. So just to tell you, I guess, as much as I can in a nutshell, I've always been I look back and I've always been rather intuitive. And I remember, things like when I was a child, I always had this fascination with rocks. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on stones and crystals now, but my mother, my mother always tells a story about how she could always hear the dryer, the washer and the dryer banging because I did not clean my pockets out when I would come home from playing. And I mean, I was a little kid. I mean, it was whatever went in my pocket stayed there because I forgot about it, moved on to the next thing. But there was just something that I was just fascinated with. I would pick up rocks on the playground or whatever, and I just thought they were pretty and loved them, put them in my pockets. I remember one time for Christmas, I got a rock tumbler for Christmas, and that was just so much fun. So things like that. And I remember just being very fascinated with astrology. Again, not one of my areas that I am well versed in, but I'm just very interested in and love learning about it. When, again, when I was a child, my mother and I always kind of discussed, the horoscopes and things like that. So there was an interest there. But as I grew up, my professional background is in education. So I was a middle school teacher. My bachelor's degree is in elementary education.
Oh, one too.
And Krista, I thought I wanted to be a first grade teacher. And then I got out of school, got my first job in middle school, and I was like, oh my goodness, these are my people. This is where I belong.
Oh, wow.
I was a middle school nerd and was very very into the community, kind of the underlying value of community, and so I really saw how that was a place of empowerment for children, and that and that was a big focus of my my time as an educator. It was really about empowering students. And so along with that, there was a lot of intuitive development that I was going through, that was really kind of, part. I call all of the challenges that we have in our lives, I call those our empowerment training. And so, through my, not just my professional life, but, the training that I got in that and the opportunities that I got that would stretch and grow me, it was really, I look back and it was all about my empowerment, about really going deeper into that intuitive development, as well as my personal relationships and all of the challenges that I've had there. And along with that, my my therapist, as when I was before I moved into working in the mental health field, I landed in a therapist's office, more than one therapist's office. I also knew that I wanted to work in the counseling field, or mental health field, and so that's what I got my master's in, was school counseling, actually. But anyway, through those experiences, that's where my intuitive development really started to take off, because I had the most wonderful therapist who brought in or introduced me to like hypnotherapy, introduced me to meditation, introduced me to like integral breath therapy, which is another trance state modality for healing. And so
Mhm.
that, just really sparked it really spoke to my soul. And when I was in school, as in my master's program, I was always drawn to the human, the humanistic psychology topics and modalities and existential therapies and experiential therapies. And so that was just like my gateway into my personal journey that has also informed my professional journey. So I really, so it's really, I guess, kind of been interwoven.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I actually now that I really bring into the work that I do with clients and, the groups that I work with, the individual clients that I work with, is really all about experience. And I always say to my clients and weave this in that I see experience as our greatest teacher. That life is a series of experiences, and we can label them as positive, or negative or neutral, but that's how we are learning and how we are receiving the opportunities for growth. And we get to choose what we do with those. We can let them, let those be ways of empowering us to be, more in tune with our authentic self, or we can, sit in that victim seat and continue to perpetuate that egoic victim mentality. So anyway, I guess that's kind of maybe a little bit about what my metaphysical journey has been, but it's been it has been just a combination of amazing, profound, hard life experiences, challenges. And so anyway, through those experiences, my early exposure and through my experiences as a client, everything that I learned in therapy as a client, I then turned around and said, I want to go get training. I want to go learn about that. And I want to bring that to people who don't have access to that now. Because I feel like the broader community needs access. Here, we've talked about Metaphysical Mississippi. Well, the exposure or access, maybe a better word, the access to these types of experiences and these types of growth or empowerment services seem to be kind of few and far between as far as being able to find them. And so at that time I was like, oh my goodness, this has completely transformed my life. It's so transformational, that why shouldn't everybody else have access to this? So
and to get the word out is hard.
yeah.
I have a question about, you mentioned therapy. Did you have it in a different location, or was it here in Mississippi?
It was here in Starkville, Mississippi.
Okay. So there was someone who was already practicing. I just wanted to know if you had left the nest and, went somewhere else and then wanted to bring it back. But no, it was already kind of here. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It was right here in Starkville, Mississippi. And another, just one of those synchronicities is the way that our souls work, as far as manifesting and what we need, the lesson that we need, or the opportunity that we need for that next step in our conscious evolution. I was seeing a therapist here in Starkville, who was practicing those different modalities and continuing his journey, as well. And so when he would, every time he would take another step, he was bringing it into his practice with me. And he was like, do you want to try this? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so then when I got to the point of doing my supervision or seeking out my supervision to finish up my hours for my licensure as a licensed professional counselor. Well, I walked in to just discuss with, she had been one of my professors in graduate school, and walked into her office. I knew that she did supervision, and I just really wanted to, first talk with her about what the process was. And
Right.
through the course of our conversation, I had just finished my certification in hypnotherapy, my first level of certification with that, which incidentally, I was part of the first class of that particular modality of hypnotherapy training. That I was part of the first class that was taught here in Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
I was taught in Tupelo. And so that community, we were, I was part of the community that was that, that cohort and other people who had been trained in that particular modality, which was a beautiful thing. When I walked in to talk with this professor, who is a mentor of mine and just a very special human being on this planet, a special angel on this planet, we talked about my hypnotherapy certification, and it turns out that she had done that same hypnotherapy certification training 25 years prior in New York. She had gone to New York for the training. And so she looked at me and she said, so now your next step is Reiki. So you're going to do Reiki certification training, and you're also going to meet next week for your licensure supervision. I do group supervision I think it's Wednesday night in my office, in my private practice office. So I'll see you there. And so, there continued my journey.
Wow.
So then, as I continued in the levels of my training with hypnotherapy and expanding that took me into my subtle energies classes and training, and then into now I'm 5 years into my mystery school training. So, which is just, expansion. You want to talk about, conscious expansion and conscious, really working to change or to raise the consciousness on the planet, and absolutely being of service. That's why I'm here.
The truth is, Miki, that metaphysics is already here in Mississippi, strong. It's got a foothold. It's got a strong presence here already. I think what a lot of us are feeling called to do right now is not bring it to Mississippi, but bring it out of the closet onto the front porch.
Right. I would agree with that. Yes.
What is a mystery school? I'm sorry. Is that magic, or is that
it is now. So there are lots of different types of mystery schools.
Yes.
So lots of different flavors, if you will.
Okay.
And so the one that I'm a part of it's an extension of my teacher is the same teacher I had for my subtle energies. She teaches 2 different levels of subtle energies training. And then the mystery school is an expansion of that. It's like taking those subtle energies and putting it on steroids. So it's really challenge you to move beyond the ego, move more into those higher levels of consciousness, functioning from those higher levels of consciousness, no longer focusing on the ego work. Yes, we do, we do need to do that ego strengthening and healing. But it's that, that concept that the ego can never be fully healed. But what we want is for it to be a good foundation to work from, to be able to hold that energy, those higher vibrations of the spiritual work. So it's getting much deeper into the spiritual work. It's the soul work. So that's the focus. And the focus really is on how are we to be of service to the collective? Are we to be of service to the, to the whole planet? And what does that look like? And rather than the focus of the ego, which is on what's going to make me as an individual most comfortable, what's going to, what's going to make me feel, like I'm, what's going to make me feel important, seen, heard, and all of those things. So it's going beyond all of that.
Do you find that some, because that term mystery school is used a lot. And to me, that usually brings up the idea of esoteric or ancient knowledge, which is all interesting and great to learn, but sometimes just personally feel like that can get a little in the ego and about serving.
Absolutely.
Self. If you're not careful, it turns into like, I have this knowledge that other people don't. How can I use it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just see sometimes mystery school can kind of be like, oh, what is it? Well, it's because sometimes that information and knowledge hasn't necessarily always been used to better the good of the whole or for the collective consciousness raising. And so that's why it can sound a little, ooh, mystery school.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Krista. And I think, that's such an important piece to focus on, is that, yes, we can get into what my colleague, Melissa, really does a lot of work in speaking about and teaching about the spiritualized ego, which is exactly what you were describing. And so many people will go into that bypass, I want to float along out here because it's so uncomfortable to be in here in the physical. So I want to hang out there. And that's no healthier. It's harmful. Just functioning from that unhealthy ego state. It's just, and that's what it's born out of. And so yes, it really is about putting nobody on a pedestal. And it really, and what I'm, really work a lot with is, what does that look like in the everyday mundane 3D world, in our everyday walking around lives? What does it look like to walk around on this planet and be of service? And it doesn't look like serving our ego. It really does look like being in that place of unconditional love, which actually can be very uncomfortable, because it looks like setting boundaries. It looks like setting boundaries that are saying, this is what I'm willing to do. This is how far I'm willing to go. And I am willing to show up in a way that might challenge you and give you the opportunity to grow. And that might be really uncomfortable for you. But I love you so much that I'm willing to be, to show up in that way for you. And that takes some ego strength.
And
you
I
know.
think it's easy for us to embrace our spiritual path and journey as a way to escape. We think that's what it's about, is escaping this physical human existence, but it's I don't think that is what it's I think it's to help us with our human experience, not to escape from it.
Right, because our human experience really, it kind of goes back to at least the way I see it, kind of goes back to what I was saying. The experiences that we have are that empowerment training, empowering us to live more from that soul level consciousness, to bring that into our human existence. And so it's not about stepping out of the human experience, or like you said, we kind of want, we have these escape plans, which is actually a very helpful thing, when we're young, or when we're experiencing early life challenges. Our psyche and our ego comes in to protect us and help us to be able to have what we need in the moment to be able to get to the next level or the next phase. It's not intended to stay, though. We're not intended to hold on to that. And so part of our spiritual development is being able to see it from that higher perspective, kind of like we talk about it as kind of that penthouse consciousness, like looking at the picture from the penthouse rather than down in the basement, which is that ego victim consciousness. And so, where you can see the big picture and go, oh, I see how I use that then in that situation, but I don't need that tool now. So I can put that tool down. And I don't need the escape hatch now, because I see, I'm able to function from a different perspective.
But do you think it's okay? So it's still okay to use these tools or modalities at our fingertips, such as meditation, Reiki, hypnotherapy, yoga, walks outside. I mean, it's okay to use them as little temporary disconnecting from the everyday hubbub. So that, from a therapist's point of view, that's okay, right? And that is part of that purpose.
Oh,
right, or not.
I would say those are not just okay, but they are necessary. So I'm glad you brought up meditation, because that is a cornerstone. There's a foundational component to the way that I work with my clients and groups in the teachings that I do. Meditation is a foundational piece in hypnotherapy. And so anything that helps you to step into that meditative space, to lower your brainwave state and step into that, helps you to step into your authentic self and be guided by and advised and guided by your authenticity. It
Miki,
brings you into alignment with yourself.
This is not taught in school.
And
kids are not, I mean, I know some teachers do. When I was a preschool teacher, I kind of did a little bit like, okay, find your quiet, get in your bubble, those kind of things. But, I could the meetup the other night, one of our friends who's from India, he shared with how it is over there, like yoga, meditation, it's a part of their daily life. Like they are taught that as children. It's just like you go brush your teeth, put your shoes on.
Yes.
You have your class, and it's not in our society. No wonder we have so many kids who are just anxiety and ADD. I'm not saying that's the cure to ADD, but I'm just saying, no wonder we're just all a mess, and our kids are a mess.
Well, right, and our kids are a mess because the kids who have all of those issues grow up into people, into adult bodies that are continuing to carry those. And I will say that that is the cure for ADHD and all of those issues. So as an educator, which is one of my passions, I'm realizing, I've started realizing that the work that I do in my practice is it's just a carryover of the things that I loved and was good at when I was in the classroom. And I'm recognizing how all of it weaves together. And so as my, conscious development consulting practice, I am contracting with school districts to work with the leadership, to work with the teachers, to bring that. And as a teacher, Krista, how important it is to be able to bring this in. It needs to be taught in the schools. The shift that is needed is to bring that intuitive nature back into schools, into the school buildings. And so just teaching the leadership how to function from a grounded perspective, teaching them simple grounding practices and what's happening, the neuroscience behind that and what's happening and how that how it impacts your perspective and where you're making decisions, the perspective that you were bringing to your decision making. That's how we get to the place where we're making, where we're creating sustainable solutions. We're creating a sense of community, which creates a sense of safety. When everybody in that organization, everybody, for example, in that school, functions from that grounded perspective, you create that culture, you create a safe and healthy school culture. And so what happens with the people who are most vulnerable to the decisions that you make as an adult in that, in that situation or, that organization. So that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, is getting back in and working with schools from this perspective.
And I think when we were, we could learn a lot from the Eastern cultures, but even in the Western culture, like just when we were kids, though, we didn't meditate, but we got bored on a summer afternoon, and we'd go outside and find sticks and go off and la lay it, like
yes,
or you had to go work in the garden. Well, it was work, but it became a meditative pulling weeds. Like we did have opportunities to tap into those things, whether we realized that's what we were doing or not. Just running up and down the street, we got our blood flow and we got our breath. And I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a minute, but I wasn't a perfect parent at all. But we have our kids' lives so structured and scheduled, and athletics and extracurricular activities, music, those are all great and good, but not to the point where children don't have time just to be bored.
Yeah. To where children don't have time to just be, able to, for their nervous systems to reset and to settle down and become grounded. And that's so, when we were talking just a minute ago about the, bringing the spiritual into the mundane everyday life, that's what I'm talking about, is bringing, a voice to what, to those things that are so important. Like when a child in a classroom is what we've heard or would have termed a child who's acting out. Maybe a child who is displaying those symptoms of like ADHD. Well, that's, another word for that is anxiety. And another word for that or term for that is an ungrounded nervous system. And that every child in a classroom, their nervous system is going to follow the nervous system of the instructor or the facilitator or the adult in the room.
Yeah.
And so that person, because of that assumed power differential, it's just underlying. I mean, it's just assumed at the unconscious level, who has the power in that situation. The person with the power is the adult. And whatever their nervous system is doing is what every child in there, all their nervous system is going to attune.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to react to it. And depending on how overstimulated that child's nervous system is through things, whether it's, so adversities, if they have, if there's abuse, or if there's some, if there's a lot of shock and trauma in their home environment, and they come in and teacher is in stress mode, their nervous system is in distress mode, then those nervous systems are very, they're very sensitive. It's contagious. And so, I think it's important to get in and start teaching educators about this, because all it can take is, those adults learning how to ground themselves and come into that calm state. And then but through modeling that, they also start to build those simple little practices into, okay, before we start, we're just going to close our eyes for, 10 seconds and we're going to take 3 good, deep, calming breaths, or, just some simple little grounding practices. Just think, what would a school be like if that's what was happening? But we're just giving voice to those where we kind of have been separating it out and going, oh, that's a spiritual practice and it's got to be done a certain way in certain conditions, and so on and so forth, which is just not true. That's a great big lie.
What? This sounds too simplistic, but what a burden that can be lifted off our teachers if we said, the best thing you can do for your student in maintaining and controlling your classroom is your own self-care.
Right.
That's how you start. Slowly, outflow, and as you learn to monitor your own biorhythms and circadian, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
You model that for your students. That it doesn't happen overnight, though, does it? I mean, it would take I don't know, does it?
Well, you were talking about teachers, the burden being lifted from teachers. If you tell them that the best thing that they can do for their students is to manage their own self-care, and you said that takes a long time, doesn't it?
Yes. And so does it take a long time?
I don't think it does. I think that it's, it really depends on the individual as to how resistant they are to doing that, to maintaining their sense of self-care, because a lot of people who are in the education profession, who are working in classrooms, they're they like to be in that rescuer role, and that tends to not lend itself well to self-care. But I think when they learn that the best way to be of service to the collective, that taking care of yourself and learning to regulate your own, something as simple as learning to regulate your own nervous system, is actually taking care of the collective, because the collective exists within us. So self-care is collective care. And, learning
I like that, right?
Yeah. I need
I
to
love
write
that
that down too. It hadn't come out like that simple before.
website.
Yes.
Self-care is collective care.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I also talk about, or help people learn, how not only does, learning to regulate our nervous system, learning about that will create a complete culture shift, but also how we set up our environment. I mean, just the simple things that as practitioners we have really kind of learned that are kind of intuitive as far as, like lighting or the type of furnishings that you have, the way that you set up your space, how it is, open and accepting it is, or how cold and uninviting, and light, the lighting, sounds, all of the five senses, how we can set up our environments to be conducive to calming the nervous system and creating that calm and comfortable environment. Well, comfort equals a sense of security.
Mm-hmm.
And so how, really kind of bringing out how important it is to create that, and all the ways that you can create that sense of comfort, no matter whether it's in a school or no matter what your business is. I'm also, I also like to work with medical providers, medical clinics, and, because those are, I feel like that, that's where we have people who are very powerful in, they hold that position of power, that,
Authority.
that power differential, that power, yes, that place of that position of authority with the people that they serve. And so how are they using the power that they carry and becoming conscious of that? And, and so what are the ways that they can be very intentional about setting up their space, about how they interact with the people that they're in service to. And so, kind of go back to, if we start to look at, for example, a child who's acting out, well, like I said, they're ungrounded. And so if a teacher anybody who works in that school, everybody who works in that school understands the concept of groundedness and grounding, and can recognize, okay, this child is ungrounded. I know how to assist that child in grounding and work with.
For someone who might be listening, like I use that term all the time, grounded.
Yeah.
So what is your definition of grounded or being ungrounded?
Okay. So the way I look at it is, I'm no scientist. I don't even pretend to understand how electricity really works and things like that. However, I do understand that grounded electricity is very, is intentional, is direct, is very directed for a specific purpose, and that ungrounded electricity harms. It will shock you, it will hurt you. And we are electromagnetic beings, meaning that if we break it down to the microparticles, that may not even be a term, but that's kind of the way I think of it. But, we break our physical being down to the atomic level. Well, atoms are made of subatomic parts, electrons, protons, neutrons, and those, they move, they vibrate, they create electrical, they create electrical impulses. And so when our nervous system is ungrounded, then we are in fight, flight. We're in survival mode, meaning that we're going to do whatever it takes to survive. And if we start to recognize that we are in that mode, then we can start to recognize how to bring ourselves into that calm and what we call grounded mode. We know we know how to plug that energy into a grounding source, and
Which a lot of people with the earthing, like connecting with nature, that helps ground us. So centering is another word I guess we could use in the more spiritual
yeah, and even in, the spiritual and even otherwise, because, centering means that we're just coming to that place of balance where our nervous system is in that place of balance or homeostasis, you know. And so I kind of feel like that's where that term centering even, comes from. And that means also that when we are grounded, we're grounded in our heart. And there's a lot of neurobiology and neuroscience that we work with in the programs that I work with, and also in like our conscious heart hypnotherapy that I know we'll talk about that some other time. But we bring a lot of that into our teachings. But the bottom line is that when we are centered, when we're balanced, when we're grounded, it means that we're plugged in, that the heart brain and the central nervous system brain are balanced and working working in harmony with each other. And which means that, the consciousness of the heart and the consciousness of the ego are balanced out.
I had a question about the school systems. Now, is similar, is using that training a way that you're working with the school systems?
Yes.
That's what it's like a workshop sort of. I mean, this would be great for just companies,
Teacher in service.
not just education, but just a normal business. I mean, because if you have someone who's in charge that isn't grounded,
Yes.
that's gonna I mean, and I know it even in my own household, when I'm not grounded, I come in like a tornado. So you can use this in everyday life, but I think it is wonderful that you're using it to help educators so they can set that example for those who are getting educated.
Yes.
Yes.
And I am absolutely, I'm these programs that I'm talking about are designed to work with any type of organization. I really do want to work with businesses, connect with businesses that are interested in bringing these services or bringing this into their culture of their organization. To really, it is about transforming the culture, whether it's an educational organization, medical organization.
I was thinking medical would be.
And any kind of organization, any kind of business. And, so I think we kind of started on this when we talked about meditation. And so that's the building block. That's the first place that we start. And so I offer I call them wake shops instead of workshops. So here at Soulflower, we call our workshops, we call them wake shops, because it is all about waking up and becoming more aware. Right. And so these are opportunities for people to level up their consciousness, to wake it up. And so I have a wake shop that I lead that's called Meditation is Medicine. And that's kind of the first step. And no matter what organization I'm working with, that's the first concept that I start to teach about. And it's about, learning what happens when we are in that brainwave state that is meditation. What happens biochemically in the body, some of the neuroscience research that's going on about meditation and meditative practices, and what it's showing us. And it really is showing us that through meditation we have the capacity to literally heal everything, no matter what it is, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, that the capacity to heal and grow and elevate is within that practice.
You were talking, sometimes when you're talking about the spiritual aspect and going into a school or business, sometimes when I hear spiritual, I'm thinking religion.
Yeah.
So, how do you navigate that with all these organizations, that when you're offering these, that you're not trying to, you know what I mean? You're not trying to bring them into a religion, but keeping it, religion. So
Yeah.
you can expand on that a little.
Yeah. And so, the spirituality that's the essence, that's the soul of a person, an organization. It is, and religion is, can be a vehicle for that. But when we're talking about, so when we're talking about that, especially some of the schools, especially here in Mississippi, there's a strong, religious overtone, I guess. And so there are a lot of people who work in our, in schools and other organizations who, that's a really big deal to them. And so what I'm talking about is that we're talking about really connecting with the soul, which is the aspect of God, in whatever way that you are, that you imagine, or the way that you connect with God, but it is not from a place of any particular religion. It's not it's not a religious structure. It is the essence within that structure that is within all religious, is supposed to be, claims to be within all religious structures, and supposedly the foundation of any religious structure. But it is, it's really about that essence, and that is experienced through the energy of the heart. And so by bringing the heart back in, we're not bringing religion in, but we are bringing this, we're bringing the spirit in.
Yes.
And for those environments or audiences who are, so I'm thinking like in other parts of the country where religion is not as important, and actually religion is looked down to, any spirituality is looked down upon. That's why terms like consciousness is a lot more palatable. Or if you're talking about energy and you talk about it from a physics standpoint, then you're able to approach it that way. But it's really the same thing. It's just different.
It is totally, this is where my background as an educator comes in, is because I look at everything as a language and vocabulary. So, math is a type of language. We take a group of symbols and we attach meaning to them. Well, that's reading. And so this is really, I think one of the biggest challenges or roadblocks that we as a society have put up is that we don't understand that crossover. We don't understand that, okay, in this context, so for example, in math, if we use this particular term, it means this. And in history, if we use this particular term, this is the connotation. And so, yes, we're talking about exactly the same things. And there's, they really are not complex. They are, they're very simple. And so, part of my purpose in being here is being one of those translators that's helping to, create that bridge, to knock down that wall that says, well, you may use this term and here's what it means over here. So to make it simple and approachable, to demystify all of these things that when people hear them, they go into that fear because, and are resistant to it because it's like, oh, I think that's connected with something bad. And I think that because I don't understand it.
Yes. Yes.
And so, like, engineers have been some of my favorite people to work with, some of my favorite clients. Now, remember, I told you that I don't have a strong scientific background. That was one of the things that I said, I really don't want to teach science when I was working in schools, just because I don't have that, I didn't feel like I had that really strong scientific background. But when I'm meeting with, when I'm talking with an engineer, and instead of going, okay, we're going to work with your chakras, when I explain energy centers and I talk about, like you said, Krista, from that position of physics, and, then instantly it's like, well, that makes all the sense in the world. Okay. That makes,
Yeah.
I can understand that. And so they make a lot of progress in their therapy, or in their personal growth, because we just make that little shift into, oh, that's vocabulary I understand. I can relate to that.
I love that. I think one of the most important things about being a teacher or a practitioner, or just a person who likes to connect with people, is to know your audience. I mean, we say that a lot around here, meet people where they are, but
Yeah.
also know your audience. Don't try to make them come to where you are. You kind of go where they are, and then kind of move around together.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree with that so much. It really is about, being in that teacher, mentor, practitioner role. It really truly is about connecting with your audience right where they are, and then very compassionately challenging them, nudging them to move, because
At their rate.
at their rate. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So,
Yeah,
and build, and that's how you build that rapport. That's how you build that sense of trust. You build that sense of comfort, so that when you do put those challenges out there, when you give that nudge, they know that they have no doubt about where you're coming from. That you are coming from that unconditionally loving place. Like, I'm showing up in this way because, your soul said, we are here to work together. And so I'm going to show up in a way that challenges you, and no doubt about it, that client knows that it is, the intention behind that challenge that's being presented.
Just like when you were sharing your backstory, I think a lot of practitioners, teachers, facilitators of anything like this, we started out as the client, we started out as the student, we started out as the patient, we started out as the injured one. Sometimes we started out as the victim. And so we were in their shoes at one time.
Absolutely.
And still are in some of their shoes together with them at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really important thing to acknowledge, is that, I'm really big on, we put no one on a pedestal. Don't put anybody on a pedestal unless you're going to put everyone, put the collective on the pedestal.
Right, right.
We are all each other's teachers and clients.
Yes.
Or whatever other word you want to insert instead of client. But we are all here to work together to grow each other.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah.
I was thinking, you're talking about dealing with a lot of energy. Do you have tools or ways to measure energy movement in your, there at your, I mean, I know that there are gauges and things that I'm not even sure what they're called,
Mhm.
but when you are, I guess, I don't know if you are manipulating energy or just taking stock of the energy or moving energy with your client. Are you using tools like is sound, smell? Well, you did say that your environment does affect things.
Mhm.
So, could you share some tools or ways that, you practice these things with
What's her first question first? I want to know
Oh yeah.
what do you, because I'm looking into this too. What diagnostic gadgets do you have? Any diagnostic gadgets that you play with?
I guess over time I have, but now the most diagnostic gadget that I have is right in here.
I love that. That intuition again, or that connection to
Yes,
source.
and yeah, I mean, I've used things like, pendulums and things like that at times, and still do. Sometimes I'll pull those out and kind of play around with that and kind of use that to kind of confirm what I may be picking up on intuitively. But really over time through my educational experiences, I've learned more and more how to really tune in to my own intuitive gadgets. I love that.
Yes.
And so and another one, or I guess one of the ways that I confirm that is when I'm working, say if I'm working individually with a client and I'm kind of getting a hit internally about, whether it's an image or sometimes it's, it may be a thought or a statement or something like that, or just that kind of this nudge to ask a particular question because I'm getting a sense that maybe this is showing up for them. And so asking the question or just bringing up a topic that's related to what the hit is that I'm getting, or just with the client saying, making a statement or using a particular word, then that confirms what that will confirm what the hit is that I'm picking up on. So that, and I love when I'm working with a client who is really kind of working with their psychic development and working with those senses, those spiritual senses, and are becoming aware of them. For example, I've got one client who he's clairaudient, and we'll be in the middle of a conversation in his session, and he'll kind of stumble for a word, and he'll just all instantly come out with the word, and it may be a word that enters my mind that he's searching for, and he'll say the word, and he'll go, "You just sent that word to me, didn't you?" To me, that's just fun.
Yes. I'm thinking of the number 5. No.
Yes, exactly. And so those, just really kind of playing around with and developing and I say playing around with because, stepping out of that whole concept of it has to be hard and it takes, it takes doing this a certain way. But playing around and developing that intuitive sense and developing those spiritual senses in myself. Those tend to be my big go-tos. Now, here, as far as the studio goes, and my environment that where I'm working with my clients, whether it's actually here at the studio or like when I'm leading an experience, if I'm leading it off site, there are certain requirements that I have that we're going to be in a retreat type setting. The environment's going to be comfortable. The lighting is going to be conducive, because that's another way that energy is either disrupted or, or allowed to flow. I have music playing in every part of the studio, and the music is music that is conducive to creating a positive environment or calm environment, incorporating things like binaural beats and, that type of, or solfeggio tones.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
or just plain, just what we consider meditation music. But that's part of how we kind of keep the energy clear in the throughout the spaces. Of course, have like salt lamps everywhere, that sort of thing. But people walk into the studio very frequently and say, "Oh my gosh, I walk in and I feel, I feel like I'm, walking into home. I feel like, it's just so calming. It feels so nice. Really feels good when I walk in here." I've had people say, "I feel like I'm walking into a hug when I walk through the door." But that's just a confirmation of how powerful all of these different things that we're implementing here, how powerful, how important they are, and energetically.
That's something sometimes a skeptic, which but skepticism is okay. It's okay to be skeptical, but or someone who wants to debunk some of these things would be like, well, it's all in your head. And my point is exactly
Exactly. Absolutely.
the power of our mind, and by having all these different sensory inputs to help our mind get where it needs to go. Like, yeah, it's in our head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And the thing is that when we're ungrounded or we're in that distressed state, it's because we are functioning strictly with our head, strictly with that survival brain. We have disconnected from, and well, that the survival brain is conditioned by our external experiences, whether it's, our parents, disciplining us, or not disciplining, but punishing us, or, fussing at us when we're little and getting scared, or having a scary experience, or having a very loving experience. But those experiences are what is conditioning that part of our brain. And so that's why it's so important to start plugging back into the heart brain, because that is where that's the part of us that turns on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming nervous system, turns off that distress response. And it's also the connection to the truth. This conditioning that we're functioning from up here, those are the stories that are created to help us survive, and to start, and then we start seeing, our environment as not very safe, or, how, what are the escape routes, and so on and so forth. And then, but when we plug back into our sense of empathy, which is through the heart, then we bring that into balance, and we go, oh, now we're functioning as a whole unit. And we're no longer strictly functioning in our head, like you're talking about, Krista. They say, yeah, that's all in your head. Well, yeah, the egoic programming is all in our head.
Yeah.
It's held in the body.
Love it. I love it. Yeah.
But that's what's running the show, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so then we have the capacity to recondition that brain, because the heart plugs into those higher cognitive functions in the brain, and the prefrontal cortex and the ability to reason. And so then we have the ability to recondition. And I would rather this be programming this than this out here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The website is soulflowerhealingarts.com. And our website is, as you may have seen, Emily, it's pretty extensive. We have a lot of different types of offerings. We have, a Reiki practitioner, and she also practices some vibrational healing, brings in vibrational healing techniques, and also she's our wellness coordinator and leads our core classes. Okay, so those are core. We call them core classes because they are kind of a building block. They are the foundational pieces of what the studio is really all about. And so those core classes meet for about an hour every week. And right now, our core classes consist of a Reiki share circle. It's a Reiki circle that meets in here in circle, and they discuss. They will have a Reiki-based topic for discussion, and then break off into pairs to do a Reiki share with each other. And then our other core class is our meditation class. Again, another core piece component of the studio. And so Amanda, who is our Reiki practitioner and vibrational healer, she's leading that meditation core class currently, and it is a sound bath. So she brings in the crystal singing bowls. She brings in tuning forks, and usually brings in an oracle deck or a tarot deck, and pulls a medicine card for the group that's there, and that's kind of the focus of their conversation after they have their meditation experience. And so those are the core classes. Currently, we have had yoga in the past, and we'll probably have it again. It's just, kind of comes and goes. And we've had some other really interesting core classes along the way.
Mm-hmm. And then you have, and I see you have some professional trainings, which we will hopefully we'll have you back.
Yes.
And we'll talk more on that. I'm hoping to have you back in December.
Oh, great. Okay.
If that would be great for talking.
When do they start? The first one starts in January, right? Of one of your professional development classes that starts in January.
Okay. So I also noticed on your website, you have a section, you're featuring Hunter Smith pottery.
I'm happy to talk about that. That's kind of near and dear to my heart. So Hunter Smith is a local artist, and he's very local for me because he happens to be my son.
Wonderful.
He is a potter, and is also Reiki 2 attuned. So he incorporates or infuses all of his pottery with Reiki, and he's very passionate about creating functional ware because he wants his work to be handled. He understands really the energetics of, like, for example, holding a warm cup of tea or a warm cup of coffee, in a ceramic mug, and how grounding that can be and how comforting and soothing it can be. And so all of his work is meant to be handled and loved on, and for you to really kind of have that connection, have that relationship with it.
So he's bringing the spiritual into the mundane life.
Exactly.
Like what you said.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see y'all next time.
Bye, Mickey. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
We
Y'all have a great-
enjoyed it.
Oh, I enjoyed it so much.
December, we should hear more from Miki Bryant as well as Melissa Ratliff discussing the foundations in conscious heart hypnotherapy. They have a winter 2023 cohort class meeting dates over Zoom for module 1 and 2 start in January. And then an in-person wraps up in Tupelo in March. Check their website, chhypno.com, for more information. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent.